Good afternoon. I am Congresswoman Valerie Foushee, representing North Carolina's 4th Congressional District, which includes Wolfspeed, where we are gathered today. I join you all this afternoon energized by the historically productive Biden-Harris administration, and it's a distinct pleasure to welcome President Joe Biden back to North Carolina and to Durham. I am very pleased to be here to help kick off the administration's Investing in America tour that will highlight President Biden's forward-thinking economic agenda that will grow our nation's economy from the middle out and the bottom up. And through historic manufacturing, research, and innovation investments, today's event aligns with the President's bold vision that will help rebuild our infrastructure, strengthen our supply chains, create good-paying jobs, confront the climate crisis, and lower costs for hard-working families across the country. We've seen President Biden prioritize workers and families from day one of his administration, starting with the passage of the American Rescue Plan and continuing through with the bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. And as a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee, I am committed to ensuring that workers and communities across the country, including right here in North Carolina, are poised to benefit from these historic federal investments. In North Carolina and in the 4th District, we've already seen the direct impacts that these transformational investments have made to our local economy, including right here at Wolfspeed, who recently announced a $5 billion, that's billion with a B, investment to expand its facilities in North Carolina and create an estimated 1,800 jobs. We welcome good-paying jobs that this and other projects will bring, and I am proud that North Carolina is serving at the forefront of strengthening our nation's innovative edge and is playing its role in the Made in America initiative. Thank you for this opportunity to join you all this afternoon.
Please welcome Secretary Gina Raimondo.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is a very exciting day, and I'm thrilled to be here with Mayor O'Neill, Rep. Foushee, one of the best governors in the country, Roy Cooper. Governor Cooper is a very dear friend of mine, and I am a longtime admirer of him. And, of course, my boss, the fabulous and effective President Biden. This is a big deal today. In fact, as I walked by you, it just made me think of how many North Carolinians are going to be put to work because of these investments in good family-supporting jobs, most of which don't require a college degree, and all of which provide a livable wage with benefits. And it's incredibly exciting. And that's what President Biden believes in. That's what we were talking about on the plane down here. That's what gets him up in the morning and gets him excited, providing jobs and opportunity for the American people. And today we celebrate in North Carolina. And under his leadership, we are making the investments we need to secure our economic future and the future of our national security for us and for the next generation. And that includes the historic CHIPS and Science Act. Not many people knew about semiconductors a few years ago, until during the pandemic you couldn't buy a car, you couldn't buy a washing machine, you couldn't buy a refrigerator, and that opened all of our eyes to how important it is. And here's the truth of it. As global competition becomes more about technology and who's leading in technology, it's going to be the countries that invest in research and development, innovation, and their workforces. Those will be the countries that lead in the 21st century. And that's why we're here to celebrate Wolfspeed, a fantastic semiconductor company at the cutting edge of innovation. Look, the truth of it is, the United States was, for a long time, a manufacturing powerhouse. Still is, but for a long time we took our eye off the ball, and we watched manufacturing leave our shores in search of cheap labor in Asia. And you know something about that here in North Carolina. You watched a lot of those industries and those jobs go to Asia. But the reason we're here today is because North Carolina represents the opportunity and the potential for us to rebuild American manufacturing by investing in America. That is what we're celebrating today. And towns like Durham and Hickory, which were hit hard by the loss of textile and the loss of some manufacturing, are now thriving hubs of innovation, and we're at one right here today, creating jobs and revitalizing American manufacturing. And the truth of it is, if we do this right, if we invest in America, if we invest in our people, if we invest in our infrastructure, we're going to lead the world again. And all of the innovation that comes from manufacturing, right? It's not just that the research and development leads to manufacturing. It's that when you make things, you innovate, and it creates more research and development. So we're going to foster a new generation of innovators right here in North Carolina that are going to write the next chapter in our history. We're going to strengthen our workforce, create high-paying jobs, and add rocket fuel to our global competitiveness. President Biden, make no mistake about this, this is just a fact. President Biden has done more than any other president to revitalize American manufacturing and innovation. And under his leadership, and following his vision, we together will ensure that America secures its role as a technological global superpower for generations to come. And I am incredibly proud to work for him, to work for this vision, and I couldn't be more excited to be right here with you today in North Carolina, celebrating North Carolina and your leadership position in manufacturing. So thank you for having me.
Please welcome Governor Roy Cooper.
What a great welcome, and what a great day in North Carolina. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Secretary Raimondo, for the great work you're doing as Commerce Secretary. She was an amazing governor of Rhode Island. She's a good friend, and she's doing a lot for this state right now. It's great to be here with Wolfspeed President and CEO Greg Lowe, our Congresswoman Valerie Foushee, and Congressman Wiley Nickel over there, Mayor Elaine O'Neill. I see Secretary of State Marshall, strong union members and friends over here. Glad that you are here. Welcome to North Carolina, President Biden, where the future of advanced manufacturing is being built. We're building things in North Carolina, Mr. President, and there is no better place to kick off your Investing in America tour than right here. Manufacturing is changing here, building on our tradition of textiles and furniture to expand to a new generation of clean energy electric vehicles, supersonic jets, and semiconductors. We're attracting the better paying jobs in droves, and we are training our workforce to be able to get them with the greatest array of public and private universities in the country and the best community college system in the country, so that they can get American jobs, jobs that give families a chance at the American dream, and jobs that make our country more secure. We've seen that up close the last few years, how important it is to have a diversified supply chain and to have the ability to make critical items like life-saving drugs and semiconductors on American soil. The Biden administration saw that too and took action, passing the most far-reaching legislation and investments in a generation. North Carolina's strength is in our dedicated, well-educated, and diverse people, the largest manufacturing workforce in the Southeast. Our status as a leader in advanced manufacturing has strengthened our economy and brought tens of thousands of good-paying jobs to our state, including the new jobs from our homegrown company, Wolfspeed. Started at NC State, by the way. Wolfspeed's work here is part of a growing number of companies that are making North Carolina a leader in clean energy. We became just the second state in the Southeast to put carbon reduction requirements into law. And through my executive orders, we brought people together to plot our course to a lower cost, net zero carbon future, to cleaner transportation, and toward more renewable energy like wind and solar. And this focus on clean energy is an economic bonanza that's putting money in the pockets of everyday North Carolinians. And by the way, it's helping to save our planet. This kind of success would not be possible without the leadership of the Biden administration. The President has delivered. From the American Rescue Plan to the Inflation Reduction Act to the bipartisan infrastructure law to the CHIPS and Science Act, he has done more in 2 years than many presidents would aspire to do in 8. And we have seen it. We've seen the benefits right here in North Carolina with investments in high-speed internet, clean water, roads, bridges, ports, airports, rail, and in lowering the cost for North Carolina working families. And speaking of them, yesterday I just signed the Working Families Bill of the Decade, Medicaid expansion in North Carolina. Now, more than 600,000 people will be able to get quality health care. This will have a major impact on our mental health system, boost our struggling rural hospitals, support working families who are living on the edge, and help us build a healthier North Carolina for everyone. And playing a significant role in this bipartisan victory, which is what it was President Biden's legislation that will provide our state an almost $1.8 billion bonus for becoming the 40th state to expand Medicaid. I'm grateful for his leadership and the historic investments his administration has made, not just in North Carolina, but all across the country. Thank you for being here, Mr. President. And thank you, guys.
Please welcome Jake Ditzenberger.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming out. All right. So I'll give my little speech. So good afternoon. My name is Jake Ditzenberger. I'm a childhood cancer survivor, a husband to my wife Elizabeth, a father to my 9-month-old Ruby, and a proud union iron worker with Local 848 here in North Carolina. I started out studying to be a journalist, believe it or not, but the college classroom wasn't for me. In my early 20s, I enrolled in a welding class and worked as a non-union construction worker, but that didn't provide the life I had hoped for. In 2017, I turned my life around by joining the Union Ironworkers Registered Apprenticeship. I'm now able to support my family. I pay it forward by being an instructor for the Ironworkers Local 848 Apprenticeship. My students learn to weld, connect iron, and tie rebar. But just as importantly, they learn teamwork and how to look out for each other, so they'll all come home safe every day. Watching the apprentices I've mentored graduate to strong careers as ironworkers is the most rewarding job anyone could ask for. Thanks to this administration, my students have a great opportunity. President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law, CHIPS and Science Act, and Inflation Reduction Act all mean a surge in construction and manufacturing jobs we haven't seen in decades. The apprentices in my classroom will build these projects. They will build bridges and airports, erect offshore wind turbines, and raise high-tech factories like the one we're at today. And thanks to this president, these will be the jobs that can support a family like mine. Joe Biden has always stood with union workers like me. As president, he has preserved and expanded registered apprenticeships, prevailing wage, and the use of project labor agreements. He has fought and will continue to fight for workers' rights to organize and empower themselves all across the country. It is my honor to introduce this fighter and champion for working-class Americans like me. He spent the last 2 years steering us back to a country that builds things again, and I hope he keeps doing that for many more years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Well, it's great to be here. Before I begin to talk about the whole notion of rebuilding America, I want to talk very briefly about what happened in Nashville. We know the names of the victims. We've seen the initial footage of the attack. 3 children dead, all just 9 years old, including the daughter of the pastor. 3 members of the staff, school custodian, substitute teacher, and the head of school. I spoke with one of actually it was the governor's wife. The governor, he was telling me his wife was about to have dinner that night with her. There's still more to learn about what happened, but there's plenty we do know. We know that this family's worst nightmare has occurred. I've lost a child, not to that. I've lost a child to an accident and to cancer. But I tell you, there's nothing like losing a child, particularly the more senseless it is, the more devastating the impact on you. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And it's senseless. You know, those children should all be with us still. By the way, have a seat if you have one. They should still be with us. As a nation, this is not hyperbole, as a nation we owe these families more than our prayers. We owe them action. You know, we have to do more to stop this gun violence, of ripping communities apart, ripping apart the soul of this nation. To protect our children so they learn how to read and write instead of duck and cover in the classroom. You know, we need to act. These are weapons of war. I'm a Second Amendment guy. I have 2 shotguns. My sons have shotguns. You know, but our states, you know, everybody thinks somehow the Second Amendment is absolute. You're not allowed to go out and own an automatic weapon. You're not allowed to own a machine gun. You're not allowed to own a flamethrower. You're not allowed to own so many other things. Why in God's name do we allow these weapons of war in our streets and at our schools? According to law enforcement, the shooter of this horror had 2 assault weapons and a pistol. And what in God's name are we doing? These guns are the this is hard to believe. I never thought when I started my public life that guns would be the #1 killer of children in America. Guns, #1. It's sick. And overwhelmingly a majority of gun owners agree. We have to do something. Not just everybody, the gun owners agree. There's a moral price to pay for inaction. Last year, we came together to pass the most significant gun safety legislation in 30 years. It was bipartisan. We got it done. And don't tell me we can't do more together. So I again call on Congress to pass the assault weapons ban. Pass it. It should not be a partisan issue. It's a common sense issue. We have to act now. And people say, why do I keep saying this if it's not happening? Because I want you to know who isn't doing it, who isn't helping, to put pressure on them. You know, I know you see on television, it's not just merely the weapon in terms of that it's semi-automatic in effect, but the velocity with which it comes out of that muzzle, what it does when it hits the body. Most bullets would go just straight through and out, but it blows up once it's inside your body. What in God's name does anyone need that for in America? Folks, look, let me come to speak to what I came to talk about. I want to thank Jake for the introduction, and Mayor Elaine O'Neill, thank you for the passport into the city. And Governor Cooper, thanks for inviting me back to North Carolina. Now, see, he should know better, but he's invited me back. We've been doing this a lot. Where's the Gov? There he is. By the way, if you had to name the 5 best governors of either party in the United States of America, this guy is one of them. And you really are. And you know why? You all know it, whether you're Democrat or Republican, liberal or conservative. He has more integrity in his little finger than most people have in their whole body. What he says you can count on. He's completely straight. We're also committed to this state. You're here on your wedding anniversary, and I just want you to know I sent flowers to your wife. I don't know about you. You better damn well be in time for that dinner. He has dinner later tonight. I'm not going to tell you the time because you may want to go to the same restaurant. But the fact is that I promise I'm not going to speak till 6:30. That's when the dinner is. Gov, thanks for being here today, but thanks for your friendship. And you have 2 great freshman members of Congress, Representative Valerie Foushee. Valerie, where are you sitting? There you are, Valerie. And Representative Wiley Nickel. Wiley, stand up, man. They're fighting hard for the people of North Carolina. And Secretary Gina Raimondo, former governor, is doing an incredible job as a cabinet member with me, and she is implementing the laws we've just passed, and we're going to change this country. And Wolfspeed CEO, Greg Lowe. Greg's over there. There you go, Greg. I was doing some photos, and a guy walked through the line and said, last time you were here for light bulbs. I have a lot more light bulbs now. Anyway, thanks for partnering with Governor Cooper on this historic investment. And this is the largest investment in manufacturing in the history of North Carolina. I've asked CEOs this question repeatedly since we began passing this legislation. When the United States invests considerable resources in new industry, does it encourage businesses to get in the game or discourage them? And the answer is universal. It encourages business to get in the game. Federal investment attracts private sector investment. It creates jobs and industries. And it demonstrates we're all in this together. And that's what today's about. We're here to talk about what we're doing to invest in America, to invest in North Carolina, and the progress we made building an economy from the middle out, the bottom up, not trickle down from the top down. That never landed on my dad's kitchen table, the trickle down piece. Progress we made creating strong, sustainable economic growth. We passed the American Rescue Plan right after I was elected, the most aggressive economic recovery package since Franklin Roosevelt. We passed the bipartisan infrastructure law, the most substantial investment since President Eisenhower's investment in infrastructure, roads, bridges, ports, airports, clean water, high-speed internet. And we passed the CHIPS and Science Act, most significant investment in manufacturing and research development in our history. We used to invest 2% of our GDP in research and development. The last 35 years, it got down to 0.7%. But America's coming back. We're determined to lead the world in the manufacturing of semiconductors. We invented semiconductors in the United States of America. The Inflation Reduction Act is the most transformational investment in our climate ever, anywhere in the world. Put it all together, it's a plan to invest in America, invest in Americans, give them opportunity, invest in ourselves. And it's working. Here's what it looks like across the country. A record 12.4 million new jobs, including 800,000 manufacturing jobs. That means we recovered every single job lost in the pandemic and created 3 million more. Instead of exporting jobs, like to get cheaper labor costs, like I come from the corporate capital of the world, Delaware. More corporations are incorporated in Delaware than every other state in the Union combined. About 30 years ago, under Democrat and Republican administrations, corporate America decided to go where the jobs are the cheapest. And guess what? America lost its edge in manufacturing, lost its edge across the board. And we did that for decades. Now we're creating jobs. We're exporting jobs no longer. American products are being made here. We're growing the economy. And today I announced that since I took office, we've attracted, catch this, we've attracted $435 billion in private investment in American manufacturing. We announced over 23,000 infrastructure jobs so far, projects so far, not jobs, projects, and thousands of American communities across the country. And in the process, we're strengthening our supply chain. Right here in America, here in North Carolina, we're making chips that go into electric vehicles. These vehicles are powered by batteries and critical minerals that you're making here in North Carolina. We're making electric vehicles here in North Carolina. That's what invest means when we say invest in America. Before the pandemic, supply chain wasn't something most Americans thought about. And when you say the supply chain, you look at each other with a blank stare. Well, guess what? Everybody knows what the supply chain is because today, after delays in parts and products, folks experience that everyone knows. That's why it's so important. You have to have access to them. My economic plan brings the supply chain home to the United States. I was asked by one foreign leader who remained nameless why I was doing this. I said, we're no longer going to have to wait for product from other countries. You're going to have access to what we do, but we're going to have the supply chain start in America, building a clean energy future made in America. And that means providing incentives for companies to manufacture clean energy technology here in North Carolina and across the country, where companies are making electric vehicles because of our investments. In Charlotte, where, Albemarle is using funding from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act to process lithium and critical materials that power EV batteries. Across the state, we're building a network of electric vehicle charging stations, and we're going to build 550,000 of them across all of America. We're driving up and down the coast or on I-85. Charging stations will be as easy to find as gas stations are today, and that's a promise. And Wolfspeed is making an investment that will further strengthen the supply chain. The largest investment in manufacturing in North Carolina history, $5 billion they're investing. They make the wafers needed to produce semiconductors, these small computer chips, smaller than the end of your little finger, that power everyday lives, everything, smartphones, washing machines, hospital equipment, automobiles, you name it. They're especially critical in power and electric vehicles, which can use 2,000 to 3,000 chips for a single vehicle. And building their construction, the size, this building they're constructing will be the size of 38 football fields. Let me say that again. What they're constructing the size of 38 football fields. We'll have 10 times the productive capacity compared to where we're standing on today. 38 football fields. Next door to Chatham County, Vinfest is investing $4 billion to produce electric vehicles to use the semiconductors Wolfspeed produces. Think about this, what it means to our supply chain and to our communities. Instead of relying on minerals made overseas in places like China, the supply chain will be here in America, here in North Carolina. It's a game changer. And by the way, America invented these chips. We invented them. We're the guys that came up with it because of the space program. Federal investment helped reduce the cost of creating and marketing the entire industry that America led. As a result, over 30 years ago, America had 40% of the global chip production. And then we got fat and happy. Something happened. American manufacturing, the backbone of our economy, got hollowed out. Companies began moving, as I said, jobs overseas instead of products overseas. As a result, today we're down to producing around 10% of the world's chips, despite leading the world in research and design of new chip technology. Why does this matter? Well, we saw it during the pandemic. When the global economy came to a halt, overseas factories that make these chips shut down, driving up costs for families. In fact, 1/3 of the core inflation rate in 2021 was because of the price of automobiles. They couldn't get enough computer chips, so they started to shut down the lines. Fewer cars were made. Workers on the shop floor were laid off. Prices went up because the cars were in short supply. Now we're turning things around in a big way. Folks, where is it written? Where is it written that says that America can't lead the world in manufacturing again? Where the hell's that written? I don't know that. No, I'm serious. Think about it. Think about it. All over the country, semiconductor companies are investing hundreds of billions of dollars in record amount of money to bring chip production back home in Ohio, New York, Arizona, not just here. We're bringing the key parts of the supply chain back to America. Companies in every part of the country are expanding factories and building new ones, creating tens of thousands of new, good-paying jobs, which don't need a four-year degree. Don't need a four-year degree. Folks, when I say every job in America should be a good job, including a fair and fair choice to join a union, I mean it. Every venture manufacturing electric vehicles, batteries, would be made stronger by collective bargaining relationships with unions. Look, we're working to ensure clean energy manufacturing future is also supports the American working family and good union jobs. And by the way, everybody thinks you want to be an electrician, you show up and you say, I want to be an electrician. You go to a 4 or 5 year apprenticeship. It's like going back to school. You don't get the pay until you are qualified fully. It takes 4 to 5 years of training. That's why they're the best workers in the world. I asked the South Korean chip manufacturing company why they're moving billions of dollars to the United States to build factories here. He said, because, I swear to God, he said, because you have the best workers in the world and the safest place in the world to build them. Listen, I know many of you here in North Carolina and many of you watching at home, like the folks I grew up with in Scranton, Pennsylvania and Claymont, Delaware. You feel left out, left behind in an economy that's rapidly changing. I get it. But hear me. We will leave no one behind in this new ventures. We're going to make sure all American workers, with college degrees or without college degrees, are prepared to compete with anyone else in the world. We're working with companies and community colleges, technical schools, union-led registered apprentice and training program to make that happen. In fact, Wolfspeed is partnering with North Carolina Community College and North Carolina A&T, an HBCU that produces more black engineers than anywhere in the country to train workers and build that pipeline to fill the jobs we're creating. In partnerships with HBCUs like North Carolina A&T, North Carolina Central University here in Durham, the community colleges across the state, They're going to receive $60 million in the American Rescue Plan funding to create new pipelines for good-paying jobs in biotech, manufacturing, cybersecurity, and shipbuilding. The top private sector companies have committed to hire at least 3,000 North Carolinians from a new clean job training pipeline funded by the American Rescue Plan. Wolfspeed investment alone is going to lead to 1,800 North Carolina jobs, the vast majority of which won't require a college degree. And guess what? The average pay for those non-college graduates will be $80,000 a year. That's almost double the average annual wage at Chatham County and where the new plant's going to be built. It's not just clean energy manufacturing. Next door in Pittsburgh, the town getting $18 million to keep contaminants out of their drinking water. Northeastern North Carolina, Alligator River Bridge connecting I-95 and the Outer Banks will be replaced with a modern bridge so folks headed to the beach don't face the frustrating delays and detours. Talk to one of the 700,000 North Carolinian families who are able to afford high-speed internet because of our infrastructure law. We put it in and it's available. No more having to pull up to a parking lot outside of McDonald's that have to turn on the internet so your kid can do their homework when they're doing it online. And by the way, just yesterday, North Carolina, because of your governor and state legislature, became the 40th state to expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act. The fourth since I took office, including funding for the American Rescue Plan. 600,000 North Carolinians are about to qualify for high-quality health care, actually can afford it now for the first time in their lives. So thank you, Gov. It's a gigantic deal. It really is. It's a big deal. Folks, this matters. Thanks to Governor Cooper's leadership putting these federal dollars to work, people are starting to feel the effects of in their everyday lives. And these investments, what they mean now. By the way, one thing that's not part of the infrastructure bill, but it's sort of health infrastructure. We finally, after years and years, are able to take on big pharma. Any of you who know anybody who has type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes, raise your hand if you know anybody. Well, guess what? You've been paying $400 to $500 a vial for that insulin you need to stay alive. Well, guess what? Now they cannot charge you more than 35 bucks. 35 bucks. Because it costs them only $10 to make. And folks, that's not all. You know, a lot of people, particularly those on Medicare, they have health care bills that are insurance bills for their insurance that is incredibly high. So for drugs. So for example, you have a serious cancer problem. You can be paying $13,000, $14,000 a year. Under the new law, no one's going to have to pay more than $2,000 a year for their health care, period. And guess what? In the process, I'm cutting the federal budget $168 billion. You know why? Because Medicare doesn't have to pay out those exorbitant undeserved fees. They'll pay out what it's worth. So folks, this not only helps patients, but it helps the economy. All these investments mean that now, if you grow up in North Carolina, you go to school in North Carolina, you can stay in North Carolina and with a good job and you can raise a family. And how many of you before had in small towns in North Carolina, someone goes out and gets a decent education and the son or daughter comes in, Mom, I can't stay here. There's no jobs for me. I got to leave. Well, you're going to be able to stay. You're going to be able to stay. And none of this is happening by accident. It's not just happening in North Carolina. It's all part of my agenda to invest in America, American jobs, American innovation, pride in our country, dignity for workers and their families. But unfortunately, extreme MAGA Republicans, not all, but extreme MAGA Republicans are threatening to undo all this progress. They're putting our economy in jeopardy by threatening to refuse to pay America's bills. Not the ones, I cut the deficit by $1.7 trillion in 2 years. But guess what? They're talking about not paying our debt, which has accumulated over 200 years. All this, when you hear these trillion-dollar numbers, that's 200 years of debt accumulated. 200 years. They want to repeal the Inflation Reduction Act, which means they want to cut the investments in clean energy manufacturing and encourage companies to expand and create jobs instead of create jobs here. They want to cede our clean energy future to China to make us dependent on overseas supplies and supply chains, export jobs overseas, and weaken our energy security. MAGA Republicans in Congress all don't want to gut the CHIPS and Science Act, stripping our investments in the next generation science and technology like biomanufacturing, quantum computing, and molecular electronics. Look, folks, it would mean ceding the future of innovation and technology to China. I've got news for you, and for MAGA Republicans in Congress, not on my watch. We're not going to let them undo all the progress we made. There's a number of Republicans that feel the same way. Let me close with this. I've been determined to make things in this country again, to build American manufacturing capacity, to make sure we're never and again for a position like we were during the pandemic. We're relying on other countries to make things that we need at home to make anything. Folks, some folks didn't believe we could do it, but I've made no bones about it. I've said for a long time, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if we invest in America, we can change the country's future. 30 years ago, I'll say it again, we invested 2% of our entire GDP in research and development. By the time I came to office, that was under 10%. If I'm not mistaken, it was 0.7%. We're turning that around. We're proving it's never been a good bet to bet against America. I've never been more optimistic about our country's future. We just need to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. There is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. Virtually nothing. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.